Assalamu alaikum to some of you and peace to the rest of you. At the end of the day, I mentioned before in previous recordings why it is that men are not making many approaches. And I will say this, I'm not going to talk to white America. I'm not talking to white Brazil, white Turkey, none of these societies. But to the black folks in these societies, I want to go ahead and address this because it may eventually make its way back to Africa, and that's going to be a problem too. Men in Western societies are increasingly refusing to make approaches. And some women are noticing this, and they're asking the question, why is that the case? But let me go ahead and give the reasons. Because this has been going on for more than 2 years, I'm sure, maybe more than 4. I mean, you've got men that believe in staying single by themselves. And then you've got other men who simply just don't believe in making approaches. And you've got men who believe in making approaches, but only for one-night stands. And what are the reasons for this? Well, let me go ahead and address this. Me Too was a culmination of other things, other social and legal sometimes, but definitely social trends that occurred and preceded it. What it meant was that, and the message that was being sent to men before, and then again reiterated with Me Too, is that although there are wrong ways to make approaches, and harassment and assault are wrong ways to do it, that the problem is that there are no right ways. All approaches are wrong. And that's the truth of the matter. Every approach is a wrong approach for a man to make, and really the only time that it's not wrong is when the woman likes him enough to let him get away with it not being right, because there's no right way to do it. When the men get so many mixed messages that by the time they are in college, it is clear there's no right way to make an approach. When you see a woman and you don't know her, then you don't know her, so you don't know which the approach is the right one to make because you don't know her. You got to approach her to know her. But you got to know her to know which approach is the right one. Do you see the quandary? It is a wonder that men did not stop making approaches to women generations ago, if you really want to know the truth. And in all honesty, some women have said, well, you know, that difficulty made it better. Some women nowadays want to say that you know, it's worth the difficulty, and that women have to be this way to be appreciated. Actually, you can be so difficult you run your man off, or you lose your man, or you miss your man. And comedians were talking about this even back in the 90s, when Adele, the queen of comedy, did a skit on this. In that skit, Queens of Comedy, she talked about this. No, I don't want your number. No, I don't. She said you can mess around and miss your man and be old and by yourself. And I'm going to be honest. When you teach women how to be independent in case it's necessary, then you're not doing anything wrong, because it can happen. But when you tell women to brag about being independent, throw it up in a man's face. Tell him how little you need him, how much you don't need him, and how little importance he is, how unimportant this man is. Then you send a message to the men, I don't really want you. And if you can't tolerate men sending you the same kind of message, then what you're saying is, I go by double standards, I'm a hypocrite, and you better tolerate it. And that's just how I am. Well, if you tell a man outright I'm a hypocrite, then he has to leave you alone. It's sad to say, but there have been quite a few women I've known that did not know what messages they were sending to men. And because they were young and the men were young, they had time to get away with it. They mistook that as a sign that they were doing okay. I blame men for this too, because men at a young age are not taught to hold to their own standards as well as meet women's and tell the women when they're screwing up. So consequently, men at a young age are encouraged to let women get away with all kinds of stupid stuff, just to get a woman. And this has sent women the wrong message. Feminism has sent women the wrong message. The modern society has sent both men and women the wrong messages, and it has made it to the point that couples have a hard time even forming at this point. We don't realize that couples are not just having a hard time staying together, married or not. As a Muslim, to me, a couple is married. But to many of you who are not Muslims, the idea of a couple, married or not, you have to understand is under threat, because it's not just hard to stay together, it's hard to form couples that can stay together. The independent woman is not the problem. It is the message that comes with it. Men are learning at this point what a bad deal it is. The whole romantic or marriage market is a bad deal for men. And I'm going to explain to you, ladies, because I've already taken 5 minutes so far, almost 6. So I'm going to go ahead and explain to ladies what it is that makes it a bad deal for men and why men aren't making approaches. First thing I'm going to mention is that it's never going to go back to being the same, because men are not only stopping making approaches, but they're beginning to encourage other men to not make approaches. Now, I'll get into why. You understand now that less men are making approaches, and that those men are encouraging other men to not make approaches. So now you understand this ain't going to do nothing but spread. Here, now I'm going to go into why. Men have to deal with the messages in women's minds post-feminism. Men have to deal with messages in our own minds post-feminism, and then they weren't always wrong to begin with. But the ones that were wrong were the ideas and the messages that women don't have the same responsibilities as men, but they have the same rights. It doesn't work. It never does. The message that was wrong was that women were identical to men. Not equality, but identicality. Those two don't work. If they're identical, they don't need each other. The other message that was wrong was that it's still wrong for women to approach men, but you equal. Them two don't go together. The other message that was wrong was that it's okay if you're the type of person for whom there is no right way to make an approach. That's fine. There's no right way to make an approach. Okay. That's perfectly okay. There's no right way to make an approach. If you're that kind of woman that there's no right way to make an approach, that's not blameworthy. That message was wrong. But you don't approach men. You see, the message sent was, men, you got to learn to tolerate rejection. Well, that's not wrong. The message that was wrong was telling women that they could avoid it. No, you got to risk rejection, ladies. And it's becoming increasingly so unless you want to stay by yourselves. Now, because of equality, you're all that's really happening is that it's coming back around, and you're now facing the same options that men face. Because legally and socially, making approaches to women is dangerous. Legally and socially, making approaches to men is not as dangerous. It's just emotionally difficult for you because of the risk of rejection, but it's not dangerous. You don't face hardship because of that. I mean, you're not going to face legal and social hardships from others. You may think that you might face it from women. Men don't blame women for making approaches, though they just may reject or accept, but they don't blame women for making approaches. And that's a very little kept secret. In Western societies, no, women, because of equality, women can make approaches. It's okay. So we know we can't blame them for it if they do. What we can do is we can say, who do you approach? And let's just be honest. The guys who make the most approaches are also the ones who are going to get approached the most, because they have no reason to not make approaches. Men who do not ever get approached by anyone that's attractive know that it doesn't do any good to make approaches, because if they were attractive and they were getting approached, they would also be approached by attractive women. Therefore, they must not be attractive, so therefore, why make approaches? That's what goes through men's minds on a subconscious level. If they think about it, then it goes to their minds consciously. I don't know what goes to women's minds. I'm not sure. What I am sure of is that you got men out there that have standards that are ridiculous and are not fair to women, but you know what? They find women that meet those standards in exchange for only what little these guys offer in return. That means that what little they offer is so valuable that it matches all that these women are offering, especially at a young age. You got women that have standards that are impossible and unreasonable to meet for men, and yet and still they never realize that it's what they're looking for, or the combinations of what they're looking for, that are running men off. Well, let's see here. I'm educated, and I am accomplished. That's fine. That's great. But in addition, I want them to understand I'm the kind of woman that goes after what I want. Does that mean every part of life except men? Because if that is the case, then your education and accomplishments are actually hypocrisy to a man. Now, if you can go after what you want and you can try approaching the man that you want, then that's understandable. But if you can go after everything in life you want except the men in whom you're interested, then all that does is explain to a man that he is the least important thing of everything that you want. If you want him, he is still less important than everything else in your life. That's what it tells men. Why? Because you went after them. You saw a car you wanted, and it involved you getting a loan. It was difficult to get, and you went after the loan, aggressively pursued it, got the loan, got the car you wanted, and hallelujah. That means that the car is more important to you than he is. Why? A man is going to say, why is it that we're automatically so unimportant until we're gone? So, ladies, I want you to understand that the message is being sent to both you and to men are the reason that fewer men are making approaches now, and it's not going to do anything but spread, because, well, you know what? Equality means equality. And that means that if the laws are going to be harsher on men that make approaches, if they don't commit harassment or assault, and a society is harsher on men that make approaches, even when they're not committing harassment or assault, then that means that, okay, the law's not as harsh on you, so therefore you have to make the approach. And that means you're going to have to risk some rejection. And it means you're going to have to deal with rejection, or you can stay by yourselves the rest of your lives. And if women are willing to stay by themselves the rest of their lives in order to avoid risking rejection, then, well, look, men have already been told that they may have to stay by themselves the rest of their lives. And throughout history, 50% of men, on average, have died by themselves. They weren't chosen by women and had no babies. The numbers were much lower for women. Even though women outnumbered men, higher percentages of women died with children. Which means that someone had to pick them. 50% of men have died without children, and it is believed that that 50% has also not engaged in relationships, let alone sex with women, because of women's selection. Psychologists, evolutionary psychologists and evolutionary biologists will point this out. This being the case, men have had to be by them. 50% of men have had to be by themselves and die that way. That being said, ladies, you're just going to have to understand that equality means equality. That means equal risk, equal responsibilities, along with those equal rights. That's what it means. And that's what it's going to always mean. Chauvinism was a problem. Feminism became a problem. Unfortunately, ladies, I can't go and tell men, look, don't be afraid to approach women. It's just rejection. I can't tell this to them. Because Me Too means that you, even if you don't get rejected, but you just aren't what she wants, your name can be put right on that list of men's names that go under the Me Too hashtag. That's what that means. That means that just not being what a woman wants can put you right up there with sexual assaulters and harassers. That's the difference. And there's a running joke among men that the difference between being a sexual harasser and being her next boyfriend is strictly your appearance and how you look and what you have. That's all it is. It doesn't have to be in the approach. It doesn't have to be in how many times you approach her after she said no. The running joke for men is that these things do not matter. Actually, it is in the first approach and how she feels about you from jump, which you can't know until you approach her. The only safe bet for many men nowadays is to stay by themselves. It's up to women if that's going to stay the same or change. I hope this message has been of benefit. Assalamu alaikum.